JetBlue pilot arrested at Logan Airport last month is believed to have died in Revere.
Tonight, a JetBlue pilot arrested just before takeoff from Boston's Logan Airport for a sex charge involving a minor.
The jet bridge was quiet, boarding nearly finished, when the comms suddenly broke. Law enforcement moved in fast, and every eye turned to the cockpit door. This was not a delay or a paperwork issue. Minutes before a Boston to Paris departure, the pilot was taken into custody on allegations of sexual exploitation of a minor. This is the story of how a routine flight turned into an arrest at the very last moment. On February 20th, 2025, a JetBlue flight from Boston to Paris was just minutes from departure. The international manifest had been filed, the crew completed check-in, and passengers settled into their seats. The boarding process moved smoothly, luggage secured overhead, and the familiar pre-flight announcements played over the cabin speakers. Everything looked like a standard long-haul routine comm, predictable and ready for takeoff. Inside the cockpit, the clock dictated every action. Final systems checks ran in sequence, instruments were double-checked, and the departure window edged closer. Pushback was looming. The pilots moved with practiced focus, each action measured, knowing that even a small delay could ripple through the carefully timed schedule. At the same time, a separate security process ran quietly in the background. International flight manifests are reviewed in real time, with identities verified and cross-checked against databases. Warrants and alerts can surface without warning, often long before passengers ever notice. This time, a flag appeared. During the manifest review, one name triggered an active alert. The pilot was linked to an outstanding warrant. The system caught it just in time, before the engines roared to life and the plane left the gate. Every second mattered, and the alert gave law enforcement a narrow window to act. The timing was critical. Once pushback occurred, reaching the pilot would become exponentially harder. Airborne, the situation would cross borders, complicating any attempt to intervene. Decisions had to be made while the aircraft was still physically accessible. The trigger surfaced during a routine review, the kind that runs quietly in the background of every international flight. Customs and Border Protection identified an active warrant tied to a member of the crew, confirmed in real time as the aircraft sat minutes from pushback. In that moment, priorities shifted completely. The flight schedule, the airline's reputation, and operational pressures no longer mattered. Every second counted to keep passengers safe and ensure law enforcement could act without delay. The usual calm of a boarding aircraft vanished, replaced by urgent coordination behind the scenes. The decision came fast. Authorities had to act while the aircraft was still reachable. Officers moved down the jet bridge with precision, controlled, deliberate, and mostly unnoticed by the passengers and other terminal staff. Every step was timed to prevent the plane from pushing back. Inside the cabin, passengers caught sight of the uniforms first, and then the radios clipped to belts. Conversations faded instantly. Heads turned toward the aisle, and phones came out as speculation began. The normal pre-flight chatter was replaced by wide-eyed curiosity and unease, even as no announcement was made. With no clear information, uncertainty spread quickly. Rumors moved faster than facts, and fear began to settle among passengers. The familiar hum of the engines and cabin lights contrasted sharply with the invisible tension, leaving everyone uneasy and alert before anyone fully understood the situation. Every second mattered now. Coordination shifted into overdrive between Customs and Border Protection, airport operations, and the Massachusetts State Police. Messages flew across radios. Officers took precise positions along the jet bridge and terminal, and every decision had to be calculated to prevent the plane from moving before the arrest could be made. The pressure mounted as the clock counted down toward departure. Outside, the aircraft was staged for departure. Engines idled softly. The pushback tug was in position, and flight attendants ran final checks while passengers remained seated. One crew member was minutes away from operating a transatlantic flight, and each passing second increased the risk that the situation could spiral into a high-stakes international chase. Inside, the cabin appeared calm. Overhead announcements reminded passengers to fasten seatbelts and stow luggage, and soft pre-flight music played through the speakers. Yet down the aisle, law enforcement moved with measured urgency, cutting silently through the routine. Radios clipped, Eyes forward, they advanced with purpose, their presence creating a subtle but growing tension that contrasted sharply with the normal pre-flight rhythm. Every passing minute escalated the stakes. One pushback, one engine start, and the pilot could be airborne, transforming a local arrest into a potential international pursuit. The connection of the calm, orderly cabin and the off-script reality of law enforcement moving with urgency made the tension almost tangible, with each second stretching the risk and the uncertainty. The moment came suddenly. Law enforcement identified the pilot, approached him calmly but firmly, and separated him from his duties. Within seconds, what had been routine cockpit checks and pre-flight preparations transformed into a scene of authority and control, with officers taking charge of the situation. Shock rippled through the cabin. Passengers realized quickly that this wasn't about a minor operational mistake or a paperwork issue. The arrest involved an alleged crime, and whispers spread from seat to seat. Phones came out as people tried to capture what was happening, and the usual pre-flight calm vanished, replaced by confusion, fear, and speculation. The ripple effect hit immediately. Departure was delayed, with the aircraft now unable to push back until the situation was resolved. A replacement crew was called in. Dispatch scrambled to adjust schedules, and airline communications worked anxiously to manage the crisis, informing staff and coordinating with authorities while trying to contain reputational damage. The pilot faced charges in Massachusetts, now officially labeled a fugitive from justice. Prosecutors painted a stark picture. The risk of flight was high, made even greater because he had been minutes away from operating an international route. Every statement in the courtroom emphasized how fast someone could vanish across borders, and how little margin authorities had to act. At the center of the anxiety was the passport. Would he surrender it voluntarily? Would the court impose strict travel restrictions? How quickly could authorities transport him back to North Carolina? Each second stretched the tension, turning a simple travel document into a critical symbol of both freedom and flight risk. The irony was sharp and chilling. The very documents designed to allow international travel, the ones that enable people to cross continents, became the reason authorities feared he could disappear. Each stamp, visa, and page represented both opportunity and risk, a tangible reminder of how a routine tool could become a potential escape route. The full story came into focus through North Carolina's investigation. It started with a tip to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Investigators traced the lead carefully, following legal procedures and securing the necessary warrants. The investigation resulted in an arrest warrant for second-degree sexual exploitation of a minor. The arrest didn't happen sooner because warrants don't always surface immediately. It took the checkpoint moment in Boston when the International Manifest triggered a detailed identity review to catch the pilot before departure. Timing, technology, and human oversight converged at exactly the right moment to prevent a potential flight risk. The airline responded quickly. The pilot was removed from duty and placed on administrative leave, pending the ongoing legal process. Flight schedules were adjusted, replacement crews reassigned, and internal and public communications managed to reassure passengers and maintain operational control. After the initial court proceedings, later reports revealed a tragic turn. As law enforcement approached him in Massachusetts for further action, the pilot took his own life. The event marked a grim and final moment, cutting short any possibility of a courtroom resolution or further answers about the case. The story shifted from shock over the arrest to a somber reflection on the consequences. What had started as a high-stakes arrest at the gate ended in tragedy, leaving families, passengers, and authorities with lingering questions. The chapter closed without closure, and the courtroom, the place for justice, remained silent. The shocking element wasn't just the allegation, it was the timing. Minutes from an international departure, the arrest became a high-stakes, tense, and last-minute race against the clock, leaving everyone on edge. This story is about invisible systems colliding. The trust we place in aviation crews, the digital trails of evidence, active warrants, and real-time screening that quietly protect the public from unseen threats, often unnoticed until the last moment. And it leaves an uneasy question. How many lives depend on fragile systems that only work when the timing is just right, perfectly aligned?